order at 10:04. Is there any agenda additions? Councilor Silver,
Seeing none, I'll approve the agenda as presented.
all in favor? Carried. Minute approval for the August 9th, 2023 meeting. Councilor Grover.
Minor correction to that one. So my computer here. Just the motions that were concerning the tax forgiveness and the amendment there too. We just had a couple of changes. So if you pull up the minutes, I will take you to that resolution at it'll be the motion at 283-080923. So the amended motion that Councillor Gender passed did read that the County of Stettler forgive a portion of the tax arrears in the amount of $2,769.87, with the remainder of the arrears of $360 as a responsibility of the ratepayer, subject to the payment of $10,000 clearing. We're just looking to amend that to more specifically be with the remainder of the arrears to be the responsibility of the ratepayer and eliminate the 360, because that 360 was based on some of the math that was done in the middle, and we just wanted to say all arrears are the responsibility of the ratepayer. And then subsequently, the next chunk in the minutes is just that vote on the amended motion, starting with a removal of that the motion be amended to read. That was a copy and paste error, and then making the same change of eliminating the 360.
Motion on that to.
Yeah, just that to move the minutes as amended.
You're good with that, Dave?
We're good with it.
Okay. All question, all in favor? Carry. Okay, we have a public hearing at 1 p.m. and we have our delegation here with the RCMP. We'll do introductions. Starting with you, Joel.
Joel McCullough, I'm the Director of Operations.
Was that the other day? Yeah. Michelle,
Sorry.
introductions.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistance.
Ernie Gender.
Good morning.
Paul McCade, Denali Red Roll.
Larry Clark, Reeve.
Dave Grover, Big Valley Councilor.
Good morning. Les Gilbert, Weimar NPA.
James Cyber, Counselor for Erskine South Ward.
Nikki Carstensen, Director of Communications.
Mitch Worship, Director of Municipal Services. Get you at that mic if I can.
You don't have to see you.
Karen. Okay, thank you. And
My turn.
yes, you betcha.
I'm Russell from the RCMP, Stettler Detachment Commander. And I have with me today Corporal Ryan Scott. I brought him along with me as well. One of our corporals here.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's many of you and haven't seen you for 5-6 years, so bear with me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back. Very happy. Definitely don't like the circumstances, but when the opportunity knocked to come back to Stettler, I had to jump on it. It was a no-brainer for us. My kids and my wife, we all still have lots of connections here in Stettler, and my oldest daughter's going to college in Red Deer this year, so it just all made sense. And we plan to stay until at least my youngest graduates high school, which is 4 to 5 years. So hopefully we'll have some more stability here that I know that's been lacking in the detachment. So hopefully I can deliver on that.
So Cam, when you were here the first time around, you were in Bashaw and then here, or how did it go?
I was here, and then Bashaw, the commander, was transferred there, so they seconded me to Bashaw for 6 months to run that before Bruce was actually promoted and took over command there. At which point, of course, once he was there, I came back to Stettler and finished off my time, and I think that was about 2016.
Who were you under at that time? Like, who was the staff sergeant or sergeant at that time?
Well, I started with Duncan Babchuk, and then was Phil Penny, and that's who I left with, was Phil Penny. So in 2018 is when I left here.
I don't know timelines. I just know who was there.
Yeah, fair enough. So, yeah, very happy to be back, and I've only been in the seat for a week. I started Tuesday last week, so I've certainly lots of things are the same and similar, but lots of changes too. So, like the administrative staff is is the same as it was for the most part. We have one new hire at the detachment now that I didn't work with before, and of course all the members are totally different. So lots of new people to meet and understand and figure out, and they're doing the same with me. So, but I have confidence. You know, my experience and my personality. I don't tend to butt heads with very many people, and can always find a common solution to things. So.
And where did you come back, or where?
I was in Provost for 5 years as the commander there.
Okay.
Yeah. So a similar community, just a lot smaller than here, of course. But farming, oil and gas, which drives the community there. And bittersweet, we liked it there. It wasn't that we were dying to get out of there at all. It was just simply when opportunity knocked, it was the right thing to do.
Kids have a tendency to weigh heavily on decisions.
Well, family in general, right? We were a little far from Costco for my wife too, I'm not gonna lie.
It's on the, can't get much more further east and still be in Alberta there.
Exactly.
We're actually closer to Saskatoon by a bit than we were in Edmonton, so, yeah. Mhm.
So, no, we welcome you to the community and we do have our rural, or not rural crime, but community crime. And we did have very good input into it. And then we've kind of, I think, taken a bit of a lapse. So we'd like it if one of you or one of your staff do attend those meetings.
Yeah.
And then, you know, also too, the working relationship with our CPOs was really good in specific spots. So we want to maintain that too.
100%, yeah, 100%. That's my goal as well. I know how valuable a CPO program is for sure. And the committee meeting, I wasn't able to make it last week, but I did have Ryan go in my place. But we'll be there, either myself or another delegate from the detachment for sure, moving forward for sure.
Mr. Gender?
The one, Tom Fisher, he's one of the members on the crime. Anyway, like he sent a letter, or he received a letter back from the justice minister. And in there, like he was stating that the penalties that are imposed on some of these repeat criminals, that you go by the precedent setting previous to that. So like the part that bothers me is say, okay, say like if the prevailing judge does not go to the maximum on there, he has a lesser part, and you've got these repeats. So how do we mention, okay, that it should be more of a punishment for these, so that maybe a little bit more of a deterrent, and we just don't go by precedent setting.
I don't disagree. That's way beyond my influence. That's the justice system. So we bring them to the judge and present them with the best evidence and package that we can, and then it's in their hands. And we don't, the police anyways, don't have the influence to necessarily throw the book at them, if you will, if that makes sense. I know that it shouldn't be that way, or it doesn't seem like it should be that way, but unfortunately there is a little bit of a disconnect there. And we struggle with it all the time. We bring people before the judge all the time that are repeat offenders, and expect or feel that they should be punished more strictly than before. But it just depends on who the presiding judge is, or the justice that's making that decision that day. And there isn't really a way to hold them accountable if if there's a disagreement with the judgment that's made. So it's very difficult. Speaking with the MLA can possibly change that and get some of the rules changed and policies and that sort of thing. But I assure you that Stettler Detachment does our best to bring the best package and the evidence forward to make sure that the holes aren't found within our work by the judge or the justice, and we hope for the best.
It frustrates ourselves, and it frustrates yourself also. You go through all the work and then you get a slap on the hand and they're on again.
Yep.
Hats off to you for putting up with that though.
Oh, thank you.
Councilor Ivory?
And personal, and that's the one thing I learned early on in my career is if you make it personal, it drives yourself crazy, because you're doing a good job, and that's basically how you have to move forward.
Thank you.
You bet.
Cam, I know you're, like you said, just a weekend. We have the opportunity to sit with K Division here during RMA. Is there anything that you would like us to advocate for? I know, and we say this jokingly, but I know you have your ways of doing it and we have our ways of doing it. Sometimes if we're both pulling in the same direction, that we can get things happen. So is there anything that you need from us go forward? I know that's an early question to ask you, but I think we want to be working partners to help you do the best job you can for our community.
Definitely. I think I have kept in touch with the commanders here. Bruce was my troop mate. We stayed in touch after I left here, and I knew John from before when he was filling in. And so I did keep tabs on what was happening here. And I feel like when we're fully staffed and we've got all the boots on the ground, I think we're sufficient. But there's those vacancies that do come up with transfer or parental leave and that sort of thing that can have an effect. Luckily, we've been able to manage some of those vacancies with a reserve constable. So somebody that's retired from the force, they come back and they fill in some of those holes and make the schedule work. I'd like to figure out what's wrong with our boat so we can keep it on the water and not have it in the shop more than it's on the water. But other than that, I think we're in good shape. And again, it is a little bit early for me, so I haven't been inundated with a bunch of issues by any means by the members or the staff or the admin staff. So Ryan, do you have any suggestions? No? Okay.
So on a go forward basis, would you how much pull do you have on, say, like the way I understand it, and I might be wrong on this, the highway division has kind of been taken away from necessarily your detachment. We used to have an actual base set here, and now I think it's out of Sylvan Lake, or
We still do. It's still called the Stettler Traffic Service,
Okay.
but they do work joint force operations with Black Falls, Red Deer, all the way to Rocky Mountain House and stuff. So they're not always in the area, no.
okay.
But
How
that's
much pull do you have on that? Because I mean, we realize you guys are busy doing the day-to-day stuff that needs to be tasked in the communities,
yeah.
and that highway stuff is sometimes I don't know if any other the counselors here, but I mean, I ride bike, and not that I'm upset that I don't see you guys that often, but I don't see you guys that often, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, I understood. I don't have a lot of pull in that regard, no, to be quite frank with that. Yeah, there's a staffing shortage all over the province, all over the country, and traffic services isn't one of the ones that they prioritize to maintain the staffing levels. So if there's a vacancy there, they're not very quick to replace. So Stettler Traffic has been running short for years, I think. There's been one vacancy at least, if not two. And right now there's two, but one's been seconded from the Black Falls unit. So he's not really he's the acting corporal is what he is. So, I mean, he's invested in the community, and he does come out here and stuff, and his partner, but it's definitely not as high on the priority list as far as I can see with the province and where they're going to allocate their funds.
you go every direction up from here, whether it's 56 north or south or east west on 12. I don't know if
I
anybody.
see him quite often on 12 East. Yeah. Councilor Grover and then Councilor Stolberg.
Yeah, that was one thing I was gonna ask. But you work good with our people on the highway, like if you get a real crazy rate of speed, you guys will do something about it. You take it, you're still going to do a nightly check through the small villages.
Definitely, yeah.
And mine was the same thing when we go up to RMA, like put pressure on them for, you guys have they have the catch and release like fishing, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you just catch them, they release them. And that is a judicial system, and I think they gotta do that. But I guess if we try to put as much pressure as we can, and you guys do too, that maybe we can get that whole stop, because it's just around and around and around.
Yep.
And it costs a lot of money to do that, And yeah, no, that's about it.
Okay.
I think we've had a lax in the crime rate out in rural Alberta, but maybe that's.
Don't even talk about it.
Like we're talking.
I don't care.
Somebody
Well, I think they were doing a decent job, and I think our people were helping out there, and I think that you're never gonna get rid of it, but you
Got that right.
in it, and a couple are incapacitated at the moment, and I think that helped quite a bit, but, everybody knows who they are. So.
Oh, 100%. And I'll advocate to all of you the same that I have in the past years that I've been doing this job. But the information that we get from the community is so valuable. Sometimes people don't think it's worth their while. They don't want to bother us with certain pieces of information. But out in the communities, you guys know who's who, what's out of place, what's in place. And if something looks out of place, we'd rather know about it and find that it's just a guy that stopped to walk his dog, rather than realize that, oh, he's the culprit that just, stole something from one of the neighbors' place that wasn't home, right? We'd rather know about it and be able to put that information together if we can to do the best we can with our patrols and target areas and that sort of thing. So, and I think that's fairly common. I don't think that's different than anybody else's approach, but working with the community is key, definitely.
How many officers do you have in the Stettler detachment now, and what is the full complement?
There's 12 on paper, and right now we have 11.
And is that the full complement or?
Yeah, we've got one vacancy that's one guy that's on parental leave, and another one that was transferred out. However, one of those positions is being filled by the reserve constable that comes in and works pretty well full-time for us here. And I do know that there's another member that's supposed to be transferred here from Bonnyville, who's got a few years service, which will be a great addition to the detachment. But I don't think that's gone through yet, just the red tape and the government and transfer and that sort of thing.
There's time.
But at least there's a plan in place.
No, that sounds really good. And as far as, the issues within the county, I mean, our administration can keep or update you on the issues that we're being faced with here that are probably need your attention.
100%. Yeah, my door's always open. My phone's always on. Call me if you have any questions or concerns, please. I'd rather know about it before it becomes a big problem.
Yeah, exactly. If you have all the history and the current situation, it's easier to hit the ground running probably. So
100%. Yeah.
thank you for that.
On the recruitment side, are they able to keep up with retirement, loss, anything like that? How are they doing?
It's very challenging right now. Shockingly enough, not a lot of people want to be a police officer right now as a new job. There's a lot of ridicule and you're in the media a lot and very negative media, as you know. So definitely recruiting is a problem. And it's not just the RCMP, it's every enforcement agency across the country, across North America for that matter. So it will take some time, I think, to rebuild that stigma and trust, and hopefully we can rebound, but they're doing the best that they can. And, they are sending us cadets from depot still. There isn't as many coming out of there, but they're doing their best with what they've got, that's for sure. But it's a challenge, there's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's good that you're used to the area too, because we do have so many overlaps with different detachments in this area too.
Definitely.
Or just our expectations are you work hand in hand with those detachments to make sure that we're covered to the fullest that we need to be.
Definitely.
And from our council basis, you're welcome to come to any of our council meetings. Even if you stop for, a good time would be about 11:30-ish.
Okay.
45, you can have lunch. You can update us and then sit down and have lunch. And, yeah, and it's the second Wednesday of every month. So in the past, we've had, some that I've attended quite a few, and it just gets a better conversation going too.
Sure. Yeah. Different than being so formal.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Stewart?
Yeah, it just following up what the Reeve just said about the overlap. My area, my ward is really weird because it has approximately 3 to 4 detachments covering it.
Sure.
It's not like we're.
Did you say your area is weird?
None of us agree with that.
It's just it's the location of it, and it's that way with many things like Alberta land titles and many things just divide right through there. So like south of 589, we have Hannah detachment.
Yeah.
To the east, and then to the west, we have Drumheller detachment.
Drumheller, okay.
And then to the north, we have Stettler. And once you get, I mean, it's still Endiang, but it is in county of Painter. It's Coronation.
Well, just to add to that, I know Rob and I know Rob and I know John, both of them.
Okay, perfect.
In those areas. So if you need a little extra influence, by all means, give me a call. Definitely.
And there was a time when we were having some issues down there, and of course, they were, the guys that were causing the problem were slipping south, and you guys were all working together on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. We'll be back.
Awesome.
And if you're free to just. Thank you. Okay, council's request for information, 6.1, Shooting Lake water levels. Brought forward by myself, just to the fact I wanted it to be in the public that we've had many complaints on it. And kind of where we stand with it. Who received the letters back, Kevette? Was it you or Andrew or from Alberta Environment?
Yeah.
Can one of you?
Yeah, I can speak a bit. Yeah, to it for sure. So, yeah, we had some concerns from neighbors around Shooting Lake indicating that the landowner was diverting water out of the lake. So of course we reached out to Alberta Environment because that's their jurisdiction. We don't have any jurisdiction to enforce, but can serve as kind of a liaison and an advocacy office. So the response we got back was the landowner in question was licensed to be able to divert water from that area. The challenge was, of course, all these types of licenses are subject to conditions, including how low that water can be before you can no longer divert water from it. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get any enforcement staff out of Alberta Environment's office to come verify whether those conditions were met or evaluate any of the evidence that the neighbors had submitted. Regarding the potential for that water being lower than the point that it should have had water diverted from. So that it's not a particularly new wall we've run up against with Alberta Environment, and there's reluctance to enforce or verify enforcement. Typically, if a permit is in place, there's a lot of trust, and we find that that's not always appropriate. So, my suggestion to council, because of course we have no enforcement authority, effectively nothing we can directly do about it ourselves. My suggestion to council would be to make that a point of advocacy with the Minister of Environment and potentially see if we can get a meeting at the upcoming RMA with the minister to discuss, again, our challenges with having local issues resolved, particularly when there's some permitting in place, but conditions are believed to have been in breach.
I do understand that we have been trying to set up a meeting, and I imagine Minister Schultz is very busy, but I'm wondering if we sent a letter into their office, maybe it might open it up that we're in more of an invitation for a meeting if she knows we've got valid concerns, because we've met with her in the past in different portfolios of different pieces, and she's been very responsive. So
Yeah, I'm hoping with the new minister that she's kind of got her feet under her now. It's been a decent amount of time since she took that office. So I'm thinking this fall would hopefully be a good time for her to start considering some of these prevalent issues. I know when she was in previous portfolios, she was pretty good to work with. And I would hope that Mr. Schultz would give us some time to talk with her or to review our materials and start to influence some changes within her ministry.
and also with our climate change, or not climate change, but climatologist that came in and spoke to ASB or through Zoom. It doesn't look like next year is going to be a booming year or this winter for replenishing this water. So we need to get ahead of this because it's could become, I don't want a range war. I know it's Les's area now, but I certainly don't want a range area down there. Also too, with the damage that was done to our culverts, et cetera, I know that doesn't fall to Alberta Environment.
No, that does come to us, of course. Without some voluntary compliance, it's always tough. Unless you have direct evidence of the causing the damage. We have indirect evidence, but we will continue to follow up on that. I haven't reviewed that file on that front in a bit. I've been more focused on the provincial side, but I can get a little bit more detail as to where we're at on damages to our infrastructure.
Councilmember?
Mr. Chairman, I want to, in any of these activities that go on, I know we rent out agricultural water pumps. Is it somewhere in that agreement that we should be looking at that they can't be used for illegal activity? I would hate for somebody to borrow one of our pumps and then the big county of Stettler logo there is using it. We get enough grief as it is. I don't think we need any help. So is there something in our rental agreement that should state that this has to be used for, yeah.
This was legal. They had a license.
They had a license to pump to a certain degree, and at what point they should have stopped, I understand. Now, whether they did in the, there's going to be he said, she said in this situation, right? Because they're going to say, well, we stopped pumping before the level went down and it's natural evaporation.
Hundreds of feet.
Yeah, no, but you know what they're going to say. And then so at the end of the day, that's not my issue. It's my issue is saying that where do we make do we have something in there? I mean, today it might be Shooting Lake, tomorrow it might be Erskine Lake, it might be somebody pumping out their sewer system or something and doing something illegal with it. I'm just saying.
Councilor Gender and then Councilor Grover.
Again, I believe there's a certain elevation that you can only pump down to. In order to pump after that, you need some special regulations. So how far that was really taken, I have no idea.
I can show you some pictures of the stakes that were the regulations. And they're well, you can see them fully. Councilor Grover and then Councilor Stephen.
I agree on a public body like that, but on their own land, if they're pumping from slough to slough and trying to retain some water in one slough and they pump two other ones off their own land into the slough, I don't know. That's a lot different than Shooting Lake, because Shooting Lake is a public body. And we rented it out this spring.
Yeah, no, and I'm cool with that. I think it's.
Guys that were thinking ahead, rather than let it all evaporate, put it into one pond and you get less evaporation.
No, and I'm cool with that. But I just wonder if there's something in our rental agreement.
Well, they, on their own land, they can do what they want.
The part that frustrates me with this is, yes, they had Alberta Environment approval, but Alberta Environment approves things with a bunch of rules and conditions attached, knowing full well that they don't have the staff to enforce it, that you can put any of the conditions they want. They know no one will investigate. They don't have staff to stand out. So it frustrates me that they will allow you to do A if you follow these rules, but you've given them a blank check when there is zero enforcement, and everyone knows that. And that's the frustrating part to me.
And then also too, we have other lakes in our area, and it really bothers me to the fact that we've been looking at levels in Buffalo Lake. Could a rural producer apply for a permit to divert water for livestock operations at Buffalo Lake? And we've been fighting like heck about the water levels in it to this point, and then we start pumping out of it.
I think part of that is, Mr. Chairman, I think they encourage you to offsite water, so that you don't take your fence right down to the waterfront. They ask you to pump onto a
Or a low lane.
a tank or something, and yeah.
It affects a lot of different things, It's
The rule, I think, is that you have to have a secondary source of water. Buffalo Lake, if you have pasture, that sort of thing, adjacent to the lake, it can't be your only source. You have to have a secondary source, whether it's tanks or dugouts or what have you. That's how the rule's written.
I guess a question for council, and to administration, do you think we're going to get the response we need from Alberta Alberta. No, but I mean for even a meeting,
Well,
or do we need to pursue it a little harder prior? I just want to make sure.
We've been successful in getting meetings, as we've requested them in the past. So I would be surprised if, and worst case scenario, if we couldn't get a meeting this fall, then I would expect that we would potentially be able to get one in the spring. Of course, we're running up against a tighter timeline for us to start looking at them enforcing on water diversion. But we can certainly educate them through letters in the meantime, and yeah, go from there.
Okay, Councilor Nyberg and then Councilor Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, I think if we fail to get a meeting, which Ms. Schultz is very, she's a sharp cookie, and I think she's, in our past with her, it's been very, very good to work with. And I'm glad she's actually our environment minister. She's one that I put a lot of faith in. If that fails and timelines, maybe there's other pressing, more important. We always have the barefoot pet position. So I think you get your talking voice up and have your talking notes ready. You only get 2 minutes and hammer them hard. So
That is true too. Councilor Stewart.
Would you like a motion so that we can get it in our minutes? I'll make a motion to instruct administration to try to arrange a meeting with Minister Schultz of Alberta Environment on the Shooting Lake water issue, and also to send a letter in advance outlining the issues that we're facing, that so she can be prepared before the meeting.
I think if we can get a meeting with the environment minister, we have a few topics. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah. And when you ask for the meeting, you can mention then you have various topics, but I think an independent letter on this one also might get her attention as well.
Questions, concerns? Call the question, all in favor? Carried. 7.1, request for decision, November council date change, page 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just our regularly scheduled November meeting occurs the same time as the RMA convention. Okay, our regular November meeting occurs the same time as the RMA convention. So our suggestion is that we move it a week. Council.
As noted there as number 1. Stevens?
I'll give you the motion that we move our November council meeting to the 15th.
Questions, concerns? Call the question, all in favor? Carried. 7.2, request for decision, annual organizational meeting date, page 5 of the package.
So this is something that has to be done every year, 2 weeks, no later than 2 weeks after the last or the third Monday in October. So we've given you a couple of choices, or you can set your own date. And I guess the big question is, do you want a full day or half a day to do this, or do you want to do it prior to the council meeting?
I would prefer not the 23rd. I show in my calendar that I'm out of the office. It's the weekend. We've got that wedding in our place. So that would be my own preference on that.
I'd prefer to do it prior to a existing council meeting, but I'm only one vote on that one. The date doesn't much matter to me, though.
Councilmember?
I don't foresee any burning changes. I don't know if anybody else sees anything. Typically when we get into our third year of second year, it's pretty much unless somebody has something that they really want to get off of, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of changes. I could be wrong. Maybe if you think there's going to be major changes.
Councilor General?
So we made a motion of say like make it starting at 9 a.m. for the council meeting.
That's what I would suggest is
My only concern is we did that in the past. Do we have enough time if we do that? I guess it depends what our agenda for council looks like.
The biggest thing, Mr. Chairman, I think with that is if it was your first organization meeting with a new council, I would say, yeah. But like I said, unless somebody has some burning issue that there's going to be a major change, I don't know. We can rally through it fairly quickly.
We have certainly been able to do it in an hour before. But alternatively, we've also had organizational meetings that no way would an hour have worked. So the feeling of council is probably going to be more accurate than my own thoughts.
October council is.
October 11th.
I'll make the motion that we have on October 11th at 9 o'clock. Make it work.
Any questions, concerns? Call the question. All in favor? That'd be carried. Okay, request for decision, fire truck purchase, page 6 of the package.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is basically a housekeeping duty that should have probably done in July. But this is for the rescue truck that we brought out. Council all looked on it. We did a straw poll through email and was instructed to purchase it. Now I need to ratify it, basically to satisfy the auditor.
I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of the Freightliner rescue truck.
I've just got a question on it though. Is what dollar figure do you have to have a motion through council to purchase something like this?
All capital expenses, our auditor is much happier if council makes the motion. I do have the authority under the procurement policy to do a purchase of this size, but she likes motions from council. We always bring back capital purchases to council, so we're bringing them back.
Which I guess I'm wondering if there's a way of documenting when it wasn't really a straw poll. We took a look at it before another meeting and people gave their nod to purchase it. And to me, if we have to do this, this is just a piece of paper, but in the same sense, you had followed everything you needed to follow. Or didn't need to follow, I guess would be correct.
So if I can,
That's typical over and above.
yeah, if I can expand on that, it is under $75,000 is within the CAO's purchasing procurement authority. However, we do have the slight catch, and this is probably more where the auditor cares about, is when it's an item that wasn't explicitly budgeted for. So this didn't show up as a separate line item under the capital replacement plan. But the opportunity came up and we jumped on it. So a retroactive approval just for formality's sake is appropriate.
Councillor Nyberg?
Mr. Chairman, it's motions like this and the issues like this that are brought forward is why we have had a clean audit letter for 15 years running
Long time.
or more. So this is 17 years. Okay. So, and in the municipal world, that's unheard of, and it's kudos to our team for doing such a great job. Yeah, I just.
Councillor Grover?
Wait, I'll be make a motion.
Any other questions? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. 7.4 request for decision, holiday office closure, page 7 of the package.
So this is another annual thing that we're doing. In the past few years, council has allowed us to close the office for 1 week, usually the last week in December, to give staff kind of an uninterrupted break. There's a bit of a hiccup this year with labor standards, as January 1st is Monday. If we give up or take January 1st in December, but still come back and work on January 1st, we have to pay overtime. So to try and beat that, which is kind of expensive, I'm asking for if council could consider closing the office noon on December 22nd and reopening on Tuesday, January 2nd.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Yeah, last year though we had that snowstorm, just so we keep the public aware. And our employees come back and work, and yeah, I was pretty proud of them actually. But I'll make the motion for that timeline.
Any other questions, concerns? Being none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. 7.5, request for decision, auction of used equipment, page 8 of the package.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll turn this one over to Andrew and Joe. They've been working on it.
Yeah, so I'll start and Joe can answer the more technical details. So this is the fulfillment of a few sets of planning that you guys have made. So starting with strategic planning last year, moving into the budget and moving into the purchasing plans that we presented earlier this year to replace old equipment was all predicated on the sale of a bunch of equipment that we no longer found necessary to keep in the fleet or no longer cost effective. So this is just the fulfillment of that planning, and yeah, we're hopeful that that this meets your approval, and then we can get it. Our suggestion is to auction it because that's going to get you the best market rate. Commissioner Allen looks like the better rate to go with this year. We've had a lot of problems in the past where we've kind of gone back and forth on this or that, and we end up delaying the entire project. It stays in the yard, and this is why this list has grown so long, because we've just had so many hiccups in the past on just trying to sell by tender and privately.
Councilor Stillberg?
I think it makes good sense, really, to move equipment we're not using, because as it sits here, it just ages and gets of less value, and we're paying on vehicles, paying insurance, and we're paying registration and upkeep, I guess, you know. So I think it makes really good sense to move equipment we're not using. That money can be better utilized somewhere else, and I'd be prepared to make the motion for option 1 to sell all the items listed.
Councilor Grover?
Yeah, I have no problem with what, this is what the other group agrees on, getting rid of this stuff. I would just like to know, I've had a couple of repairs, and want to know what day Mr. Allen's going to sell this stuff so they can bid on
Thank you. Through the chair, it's on October 12th and 14th.
it. 13th, 14th?
12th and 14th
Of the 14th of,
October.
14th of October. Okay.
So is this timed, or is it's a timed auction?
Timed auction.
Councilor Gender?
That question to Joe is say like the Packer, the conduct is not really sure, like low hours on.
Yeah, we've through the chair, we did have a look at our drum compacting roller, vibrating rollers, and it does have low hours on it. But whilst we looked at it, the reason it's got so little hours on it is because how little we've actually used it. I believe it was purchased a couple of years back, and we haven't actually used it in the last 2.5 years. So again, it's one of these things that it wasn't just a case of looking through and saying, okay, we have crew cab trucks, 3/4 tons sitting at 300,000 hours. Although these are very, very well maintained, good vehicles and good trucks, we did also look comprehensively through our asset management and our equipment replacement policy, and also looking at what we actually have to make sure that if we're not utilising it, we're not using it, then there are some pieces of equipment that we're better to sell. It's far more beneficial for us to bring in a new piece of equipment. We brought in a smooth drum roller compactor to complete the Big Valley bridge project. It's far more economical for us to bring that in a rental than it is to actually own a piece of equipment and insure it for 2-3 years and for it to sit and not be utilised. So there are a couple of items in there that you'll see at the lower hour range, but we think that that's best value for what we're doing.
Councilor Stevens?
I'm comfortable with this list and sending it to auction, but just a note for our staff when we're creating these lists, we have had some preliminary discussions about the old Ford Rapid attacks at the fire department and maybe rejigging where they're located. The fire department doesn't use those very often as a rapid attack, but they are utilized to jockey manpower to and from. So when we're looking over this list, if we're talking about sending one of those, maybe one of these works as that backup transport, someone that gets to the call an hour later and goes to assist, maybe one of these older vehicles that isn't a huge value, maybe there's an opportunity there as we're reevaluating.
That's a good point, actually. And, you know, in industry, it's very well known that if you decommission something, that it's sent out to all the other area players and say, hey, within our company, is anybody in need or could use one of these? And then that area site manager can say, oh yeah, I actually could use this, we'll come get it. So that's something we may want to look at putting out to our other department heads and say, with a caveat that they don't just get to take it and squirrel it away in their back pocket.
Joe and then Andrew.
One of the things that we utilised this year, going on what council's direction was when we were looking at our asset management and specifically our equipment lists, we used one of our ag services vehicles to move across into the Denelda Fire Department's command vehicle interim chief, and then that vehicle's now been backfilled through one of our capital purchases that's still to come back in, and then ag services will get Brad's truck from engineering, so we are kind of succession planning where our vehicles are, just to make sure that we do have that as well. So
Yeah, I wanted to elaborate on the same thing. We're just, we've always had a really holistic view of our fleet. It's not this is mine, I get the money from the revenue, you can't have it as a result. It's pretty back and forth for equipment, especially with the sort of the core three ASB, public works and operations and utilities. And now with the renewed direction and the new mandates with our fire department and looking forward to the new management structure as well, I think we'll have a much better pulse of what their needs are in the same way. They've sort of always shared with ambulance. So they've usually gotten the hand-me-downs from an old ambulance. That's, you know, not something you want to be relying on getting you to Red Deer or Edmonton for a patient in need, but it's great as a people mover or for equipment or for rehab and eating Subway and kind of thing after a 13-hour call. So yeah, we're glad we can now get a little bit more of a connection between sort of the emergency services and the non-emergency services is the connection we were missing.
I just have a question when it comes to reuse of trucks, especially from fire departments. I've seen, there's one truck running around the town of Stettler that's an old fire. Like, there's a fire truck, but then there's also a 3/4 ton with the topper on it. Mm-hmm. Did the town, was that town purchased? Was that?
Yeah, so there's been a few. They use one of the older squad units, and that was one that they had bought outright, I believe, at the time. And since then, we've always tracked how we allocated the capital so that, yeah, we can repatriate some of those good vehicles. And even I think the town has utilized an old pumper as well. They use it for
Watering trees.
street cleaning and watering trees and just all
Flooding ice rinks.
yeah, exactly. Just wherever they need to move water around. And we've often resold our used fire engines to farmers and 100-acre colonies that are likely to use them in the field and the community. Some have ended up putting, just external pumps on it because trying to do a replacement of the fancy integrated pump was too expensive. But they said, well, I got a tank, I got a pump, I'll make it work. And so, yeah, we've seen great use in them.
Any other questions, concerns?
If we could get new ambulances, we could probably.
By the time we're done, we might have so many kilometers.
These two are so mild out, there's no value left.
We probably should order new ones now.
We're waiting for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, got a question on the table, call the question.
Is it a time auction anyhow, right? And you as Mr. Allen, because of their big coverage of all over, or rather than a local? Okay.
Councilman David.
I do have one piece of information too. We do have an old ambulance sitting up in the Denelda Fire Hall yard. We are using one. There was two, but we're using one right now. But there is another one that's just sitting there, and it's been there for, well, it was in the fire hall for years and years.
Yeah, so those ones have actually been, it's sometimes a little tough. It's a little deceiving sometimes because so there's the fire department right now runs 4 different old ambulances. And there's always kind of been a spare to the spares, if I can say that. But it hasn't always been the same one that's been in the Donaldo Hall. The Donaldo Hall has been the parking spot for the one that's not directly in use, but they have switched through it. It gets really confusing with the unit numbers with those 4 because they do get a little passed around a little bit. But yeah, it's I would say that it's not accumulating too much dust right now. And of course, we're going through a more holistic view of our assets through the management changes that we're doing. And so we'll make sure that it's right sized as we take a look at our assets. But right now, I don't think that we're being wasteful.
All right, yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that there was 2, we're using one, but
So there is one in Big Valley, one in Stettler.
Yeah, so Big Valley, Donalda both use them as rescue trucks. And then Stettler uses it more as a people mover and equipment mover for some of the specialized equipment or the investigation equipment. And then there's sort of a spare one. It's kind of swapped out between Stettlers a few times and can fill the gap for Big Valley and Donalda.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. 7.6, request decision re-water hookup request, page 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sharon, I'm guessing that's why you're here.
Good morning. We've had a request from one of our residents to connect to the county water line due to the drought conditions this year and has asked to connect for his livestock. The present land is directly east of the existing water line. With the location of the property from the water line, the county would collect their fees back through the connection fee. The recommendation that county authorize administration to construct a water service connection for the northwest of 15, 4019 west of 4th with expenses up to $15,000 to be funded from revenue from connection fees, and the remaining balance would come from revenues. Or reserves, sorry.
Councilor
This is right off the road. The line runs right by it, right? Okay. Falls area? Falls.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead with this.
Just, when we do these contracts, we had that request come in about hookups, on hookups. Can we make that clarified?
Even hooked up.
Councilor
I like to see it stay hooked up and charge them. It's a minor fee, and then we don't have to be running out there hooking up, not unhooking, where we're gonna spend more than the hookup fee is.
Yeah, so the direction council gave when we brought it to you guys last month was not to waive the flat fee while disconnected. So we've communicated that to both the existing guys and the guys that have been inquiring about it. And so they are making their decisions fully informed.
We have a question on the table. Any other questions? I'll call it. All in favor? Carried. 7.7, request for decision, Clearview Public School request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this request came in just late last week. Clearview is asking for 2 representatives from County Council to go through the planning process of their new elementary building and high school renovation project, which would mean, I think they have a tour scheduled for this month, the first part of October, over in Wolf Creek.
Yes, go ahead.
Just wanted to add a little bit. So of course, right around the corner, due in next June, are JUPAs, or joint use planning agreements. Those are akin to an ICF between a municipality and municipality, but these are between municipalities and school divisions. So we don't have one in place with Clearview yet, and that will be coming. But that will define the relationship and how how we decide on what capital projects we're going to participate in together, what operational things we participate in together, what community facilities schools use, and what school facilities the community use. And so there is a tiny bit of concern that prior to that being in place, the participation too heavily or too much support for sort of an unknown project may introduce too many unknowns into our budget. So there may be some use in indicating to Clearview that we would prefer to complete the joint use planning agreement first, so that we've got an idea of a framework for how we're going to proceed. And that way we don't have any surprises or any miscommunications or misunderstandings that, oh, we thought, you were going to support this project because you worked with us on the planning for the project. The joint use planning agreements would make that process a lot clearer.
Councilor Stevens?
To a certain extent, miscommunications are going to come up even with that approach. It is being advertised that this is a joint project by the town, county, and school division. So it does, I can definitely see value to the project, and I'd like to know more information for sure. There's merit to discussing this, but I am a little bothered by the fact that they're advertising publicly that we're on board when we don't know the scale, we don't know the budget, what our contribution would be. Is that a one-time contribution? Is that an annual contribution? Because there seems to be rules with Alberta Education. If it's not something that they fund up front, then they don't want to fund any repairs, maintenance, operational of that add-on. So there's a whole laundry list of questions that I'm, despite me being very interested in seeing it as a valuable project, I'd like to know. So that's point number one. And point number two, when we're discussing a multiplex at the school grounds, that's open to the community, I find it difficult to disconnect that from our town rec agreement. If this is a recreational facility for the whole community, I think it's got to be part of the same conversation to say, yeah, everything we send the one check annually for recreational in the town annually. We don't have any input or control over what gets spent on, and then we add this on top. I think the two are connected, and they should be discussed as a connected thing. It's a rec facility for the community used by town and county. To treat it as a one-off is, I don't know. I don't really like that approach.
Well, to Mr. Stevens' comment earlier about stating that we are part of the group that's promoting this, I think there was not that many years ago that there was an announcement made at a council chambers that there was a renovation going to be done at the library, and we were on for half. But the way we were notified was through the Stettler Independent. That has since changed. We definitely have had a much more open conversation. To say that that doesn't happen, many times that in the past it has happened, till we have basically said, whoa, just by the nature of our business doesn't mean that we're on board with this. We still need to make the decision. I do have a number of concerns with something within the school system because of the simple fact that when I get my county tax notice and I have to pay it, upwards of 45% of it is school tax. So we seem to, as counselors, get the brunt of, sometimes the brunt of taxes going up, and when it's not even our fault, your school taxes have gone up, and we're the ones that they don't know that it's actuality, the school tax that's hitting them harder than we are. So that bothers me. I do see anything on the school system it seems to me like it's a double dip in a lot of ways, because you've taxed me on my school taxes and now you're taxing me on my municipal taxes to contribute to this. And then on the third one, I think we have to cautiously look at this, because of the simple fact is we know a number of our member municipalities from RMA have went into arbitration on items, notwithstanding Brazeau County having to pay for a daycare that they only in any way, shape, or form had sent a letter in support of it and ended up paying and back paying previous 5 years back to capital, the contribution to the, I mean, I think it was the tune of $150,000 operation and almost 1 million in capital. So that's one municipality, and I think there's a number of 4 or 5 other ones that have went to mediation with this, and I think we have to be very cautious. I like the approach from administration that we get our ducks in a row. We look at that joint use agreement, and once we've settled that agreement, then we can look forward and see where we're at.
Just wanted to comment that Councillor Nyberg makes some good points. We also have a rec agreement that's coming up to a 10-year anniversary this year. So we have an opportunity to open it at that time if we so desire. So do we continue to work with the town of Stettler as we have in the past with the town of Stettler, county of Stettler, Ponoka County, and the town of Ponoka, where we tried to pool some resources and get the walking, the field house and the walking tracks inside, pull that type of support and push it all to Clearview, where in the current rec agreement, anything on school property is exempt. So the town and the county don't partner on it. If we do it separately from what we already pay into the rec agreement. Then I would agree with you, our taxpayers are looking at paying double. So would we need a letter of clarification to go to Clearview?
I think a clarification letter makes all the sense in the world, because the other thing that is in the back of my mind is we have to be consistent. So yes, we want to maintain a healthy relationship with Clearview and the town, but I think the town has to respect the fact that this is not our only school. We have schools at Erskine, Denelda, Botha, Bymore, the Catholic school, which Big Valley, and what we do for one, we want to do for consistently. And I mean, if we attach a big price tag to this, that's a lot of other people that are going to be knocking at the door. And we've seen what happens to our hamlets. We were discussing economic growth yesterday. When the schools close in these hamlets, it doesn't end well for the hamlet. So and ironically, you brought up daycare at Brazeau, because that is involved in this project as part of the expansion. I'm not sure if, as a council, we ever discussed that we want one of the services that we want to be involved in providing is daycare. I mean, I don't remember that discussion ever happening, and this is fairly outside of what we have been doing historically. So,
Well, I just want to clarify, Catholics pay taxes. I just want to make sure that that's just making sure that I understand that, Mr. Stevens. I'm being facetious, absolutely. And that is my biggest fear in that sense, that you're right. There will come that request from, and where does the request end? You speak of this right now, that it's the Catholics, but where does the request come from? We have a couple of private schools operating within the community now. We have, they may come to us for minor requests, and then it becomes a snowball. And the other biggest fear that I have is centralization. We've seen this in the school division in the past. It's become a very divisive issue where, a number of our school board trustees have went through that in the past, where talking about closing a school becomes a nightmare. But if you if you have centralized it all to Stettler, realistically, Erskine is 10 minutes and Both is 10 minutes, do they then forgo those two schools and close the doors? And I mean, as I mean, Erskine School holds a very, very, very strong spot in my heart because of our family's connection with that school. So I would hate for it to ever close its doors.
Never let your heart get too tied to it because they just rip it from us.
Yeah, I know.
You know all about
Yeah,
that?
you know all about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I pretty much echo what Councillor Stevens and Nyberg have said, because the future commitment, even though not implied, can be pretty much forced on you through the precedent-setting Brazos County case. So I think we have to really be cautious on this, even though we all know it's a very good project and we'd like to see improvements in the school in Stettler. I think we must wait until the joint use agreement is arrived at, just to make sure it is spelled out totally clear what our commitment is in the future, because anything we do today could definitely translate in, unknowingly translate into future commitments. And I think Councillor Nyberg alluded to this too. We already contributed about $4 million in school taxes from our ratepayers. We collect it, but we forward it to the government. It's, I think, close to $4 million that we collect from our ratepayers for school. And if we have to make large commitments in the future for the school itself, we'd have to raise our municipal taxes to cover the extra. And that would be a very high burden on our ratepayers. So I think for their best interests, we have to err on the side of caution, even though it's a good project, and delay this invitation until we have our agreement in place.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna get to. And you missed close to $500,000 that we give recreation every year with this agreement we already have in place. Use some of that. I think I should make the motion for number 2 for now. You know, we can always revisit this.
I think Mr. Stevens was before me, but okay, just, and the only thing that I want to caution is I don't necessarily want to throw water on the fire of what these guys are doing. I think it's an important project. But I think we also should caution our partner and explain to our partners, both the town and Clearview in this case, why and what our position is. Just to walk away and say, no, thank you, is something, but I think we need to let them know why, and our fear is what happened with Clearview, or with Brazos County, and I can't remember the other 4 municipalities that went through it. That I think Yellowhead was one of them that got burnt on. I think Barhead. So there's a number of. I think Barhead was over a swimming pool. So, but either way, I think we are in the same boat as much as the town, and I'm not sure the town has had the opportunity to understand the same information that we have. They could, by default, be in that situation and find themselves in a arbitration with Clearview and end up not looking so good either. So I think we should caution everybody to have a look at what this ramifications out there are. So.
I support the motion, but I would if Councillor Grover's open to it, add a friendly amendment that we send a letter explaining
I agree with that, but it said at this time. And we're always open for negotiation with Clearview or the.
You'll accept that we send a letter explaining.
Yeah.
Would you, if I could, Mr. Chairman, would we send that to our other partner in the town as well? Just so that, because sometimes it gets lost and they think that it's just, we're not doing anything.
We're not bucking out, but.
And I just need to speak on this for a second before we vote too. I've got concerns on what joint use is, how joint use is defined. Being on school grounds. Yesterday, we talked about our public halls. We talked about facilities where people could have functions. If a joint use agreement allowed it that you could have that, open that up as a hall, I would have a whole different feeling on this, because then we would adequately address what we've been talking about for quite some time in a joint fashion. But I have a feeling that the Clearview would have such a list of rules on a facility like this that it wouldn't be able to operate like that. So I'd ask the chair to get back to us on what joint use meant. And I haven't heard anything back, because I said that could make a lot of people's decision. Because we do need another large facility to host large functions in this town or in this community.
Imagine if you had a hall with a commercial kitchen that the students could cook in for a wedding.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be like, I mean, if you could visualize a perfect world, right?
Yeah, and actually they could take bartending if they were 18. We need them. It's gonna happen.
I would sign up for that.
We need a multi-function facility.
If I can, Mr. Reed. So I think the question of what is joint use is exactly the question that the joint use planning agreement needs to answer. What is joint use? What do we do about it? How do we fund it? How do we talk about it? Just like the ICFs did. The example Councillor Nyberg used about, finding out through the independent that we were, committed to another municipality's project. It hasn't happened since the ICFs, because the ICFs have a very well-defined set of expectations for everyone. How we decide on new projects, new agreements.
Funny how that works.
We maybe haven't heard it through the independent, but we've heard it through other sources that we're funding things.
Well, there's
continually.
There is always the chance, the opportunity for somebody saying, we'll ask the county to contribute, being misconstrued as the county's going to contribute. And you can't affect the rumor mill that way. But certainly the proper and official channels have been well respected under the ICFs.
Great discussion on this. We have a motion on the table. Call the question, all in favor? And that would be carried. Request for decision, purchase a cargo van. It's in the additions, page 5.
Chairman, Joe, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you very much, through the chair. So after a rather extensive invitation to bid process for our vehicles at the beginning of the year, the council had approved the purchase of 5 vehicles for public works, 2 3/4 tons, 2 half tons, and 1 small box van for our parts vehicle. As part of our renewal of our vehicles, this is one of the things that we were looking into. Now, we have already put this out to public tender, I believe 2 separate times. And both times we've come up with nothing returned to us, and that was both inside the county and the town of Stettler. We went directly. We actually handed tenders directly into Dodge, Ford, and Chevy, and asked them to bid on it, and he just said the availability wasn't there. I've been scanning different auto traders and Kijiji looking for vehicles this year, trying to find what I would regard as a fairly a good purchase, and for around the $60,000 mark that we were looking to try and spend this year, we would get a very basic run-of-the-mill 2023 GMC or Ford, quite a bit smaller than we were actually looking for. The small Mercedes van, or the mid-size Mercedes-Benz Merits van, came to my attention last week in Red Deer, Mitsubishi. The price was just over $55,000 or $56,000. Managed to kind of talk through the staff and see what they could do for us, and they came down to $51,000. I subsequently then went to Gary Moe. I went to a couple of other garages to find out comparable prices to see what we could get for different ideas. And anything else that we're looking for around the $50,000 to $60,000 mark is sitting at that kind of range. The vehicle that's available for us just now is sitting at $51,000. It was a vehicle that was purchased by a local business in Red Deer. They were using it for taking oil out of vehicles, transferring oil. They started up their business in 2021, and then they got into a bit of an internal conflict. The vehicle was then parked up and never utilised. So Mitsubishi Red Deer purchased the vehicle, and that's why it's got such low mileage on it. The vehicle itself is blue in colour, but that's a wrap, which kind of goes to even more of a kind of value for it because it's going to be well protected underneath it. Still comes with a warranty, and it's available right now. So I wanted to bring it back to hear what council's thoughts were on it, and if we need to have more of a conversation on it, I'm more than willing to kind of sit back and bring this forward for a request for decision. But I wanted to bring it forward to hear what council's thoughts were on it.
Councilor Stevens? The value seems to be there relative with the Mercedes for that low of mileage. Not overly familiar with these particular vehicles. What are we looking at for difference in fuel mileage between the 3/4 ton GMC and the Mercedes?
Great question. So the Mercedes, I believe, comes with a 2.4 turbocharged 4-cylinder inline engine, gas engine. They are very fuel efficient. I'm very aware of them working in Europe. Mercedes and Ford are really the vehicles that you go towards. And Mercedes vans hold their value very well for resale value. So even looking at resale value further down the line, I believe that that's going to be a good purchase for us. But certainly when it looks at fuel efficiency, the fuel efficiency in that Mercedes van versus a 6.7 litre or 6.2 litre V8 gas vehicle wasn't going to be much of a comparison. I did try and find an electric vehicle, but unfortunately, couldn't find one.
Any other questions?
Yeah, no, I like option one. I think that will have the best value and it'll hold the value of the best. So I'd be prepared to make the motion, the county purchase the one. It's from Red Deer Mitsubishi. 51,000.
Cargo van, what are we using it for?
We're using it specifically for parts.
Go get parts and stuff like that.
We're using it for Steve in the parts department, and the idea is actually also to put maybe a larger decal in the back of it as well, and we can utilise it if we're doing different events, if we're going to maybe go and do some more parades. I want to make it a bit of a kind of flagship vehicle, but specifically the main use for it and where it will sit 99% of its life will be specifically in the parks department. It's a box van inside.
Mercedes, better than the electric car that came last time. In an oil and gas industry that pays most of their taxes.
Any other questions? Councilor Nyberg.
Just availability on parts. Like, I realize what you've got going here. If we stay to a GM product, that Savannah van would be very similar to most of the Chevy trucks that we have, as far as oil filters, air filters, general wear and tear parts. Just maybe if you can speak to the fact of that being, do we have any other Mercedes product within our lineup?
Thank you through the chair. We do not currently have any other Mercedes, and I probably won't look to have any other Mercedes vehicles inside our fleet. The main idea for this is Dodge and Mercedes actually have quite a lot of good and bad points, both down the line. A lot of Dodge parts are in Europe as well, so Dodge and Fiat are closely linked. So a lot of these parts are interchangeable now. Accessibility and availability for parts and vehicles. We have Mercedes in Calgary and in Edmonton for parts. Mercedes is readily available. We're not buying Kimco Chinese parts, spurious parts that we're never going to get parts for. I know that parts are readily available for this vehicle. It's a new vehicle. It's new on the line. It's the most up-to-date current Mercedes. So I'm not concerned about it. But it was one of the discussions that I had with Kip Scott actually in GMC, because I visited GMC Kip Scott in Red Deer over the weekend as well, and that was one of their kind of selling points to me, trying to push me into a new vehicle, was accessibility for parts, what we're looking at, and they even admitted you shouldn't have any issues, you shouldn't have any problems with this, but it was one of the things that we're looking at.
One quick question. Somebody bought a foreign make I'm gonna call this Mercedes-Benz, they had to take it for warranty. You had to take it to an authorized shop to get the oil changed in it and stuff, so you have to take this one.
That
It
one.
can be changed here and by our mechanics and it still has warranty. Okay.
And just on the Mercedes, on Highway 12, you see lots of different groups driving Mercedes vans now. So the parts must be available.
Well, and
But on our GMs, just a note on GMs. My neighbor, one of my neighbors had just under a 2020 that sat for 3 or 4 months waiting for a fuel pump.
no, and I'm just saying, what I'm talking about it is, so if you look at the WestJet model, WestJet has they run 2 planes. They basically, and they have one seat, and it goes for every plane that they have, right? Whereas Air Canada has, I think, up to almost 11 different models that they fly, so they have to have 11 different planes. My concern is if we get a Mercedes today, and then, you know, we've got GM, we've got Ford, we've got Dodge, and now when you look at Mr. Gravis's parts department, pretty soon he's going to have another shelf for Mercedes. Then he's going to have another shelves for Audi. You know, that's just my concern. I like to have, if in a perfect world we should have interchangeable oil filters that go for every animal that's out there, but it's not a perfect world.
This year we saw with what we were going to buy with vehicles and that the market had to change their decision when delivery wasn't there. So the market drove that decision too.
I think with everybody's looking at what they can get and vehicle wise just now as well, and what the idea with going with this option is to try and find. I mean, I've been finding vans. Steve's been looking at vans. I've been looking at vans. We call each other over the weekend. We discuss if we can find something. Steve found a little Ford van, 60,000 kilometers on it. I found a Dodge, 20,000 kilometers on it. Then we find new vans. Then we find a Volkswagen van. We've been bouncing this one backwards and forwards since the budget got approved. And this is really the first vehicle that we both sat down and looked at. Steve went and looked at it yesterday. He came back and he said, yeah, that ticks the boxes. That makes sense. With regards to just even getting parts and the availability for parts, I think everyone's aware my wife and I were involved in a small automotive accident in February in a white 2022 Jeep Wrangler. That's it, just going in for repair just now, and it was 2 doors. And that's not nothing fancy Jeep Wrangler. So parts and availability are going to be a concern no matter what we do. And I think it's a very valid point. I appreciate it.
Now that I know Steve's driving it, do we have the budget to put like proud soccer mom decal on the back just to see his reaction?
Already ordered.
Okay, question on the table. Call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it. That is it for new business. We move to reports. Everyone's had a chance to review.
very busy, is she?
I just said that's one nice picture.
Hold it, just let me get down. I want to duck because does she have anything she can throw?
You want a steel cup?
Yeah,
It's just because he didn't have his glasses on, he couldn't read it.
yeah, exactly. Counselor Gunner, if I could, I still can't read.
On August the 8th, you had a meeting like with White Sands. I was just kind of wondering like what was the outcome of with that one, whether they starting their subdivision.
Basically, we just relayed the message that council wanted this development to adhere to the Buffalo Lake IDP, and that we would be opposing it or appealing it through the Buffalo Lake IDP to ensure that they had utilities that, what's the word I'm looking for?
Communally serviced.
Thank you. Community service, water and sewer for this development. We met with their planner and their new CEO and just basically relayed what the message from council was.
Be quite a shocker back to the developer.
I think so, but I wasn't with Craig I think Nikki was the second time that they met. That was when I was out for mom, but I think the same message got relayed, so they know our position, I think, quite well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Counselor Gander?
So on page 24, it's for the insurance. It was on the traffic counters, was found damaged, claim was started.
They are going to replace it. I'm pretty sure that this traffic counter belonged to Stantec. And we were contracting it, and our insurance company, from what I understand, is going to cover it.
I guess the question I had, the location, and then how was it damaged?
That one was
That
ours?
one was ours, yeah.
It was,
So the photos, I was like, they must have the same ones as us, but no, it was ours.
it was located on 40-2 and 20-4, kind of that, where it comes together, close to that area.
Up around the lake.
Yes. That was for the traffic study, and somebody vandalized it, so.
Did they run it over?
We had to knock it off first, 'cause
Yeah.
it wasn't on a pole. Ours are radar-based ones, not the pneumatic tubes, so they sit on a pole on the side of the road, and basically, and I think probably the reason we've had problem in it kind of works like a radar gun, and quite possibly a person's speed detector, if they've got an aftermarket speed detector or radar detector in their vehicle, would go off on the basis of passing it. They might have noticed it and thought that it was for speed enforcement. There's no camera on it to take a picture of your license plate, but we do suspect that that might have been a motivating factor.
The ones that I saw were mounted on our signposts. It was a long ways off the road. It was quite a ways in the air. This was not a accidental thing. This
Certainly
was,
intentional.
as to what their intentions were, I don't know, but they did it intentionally.
We've, since we've had most of our traffic categories vandalized down by the Scholar area, we've had to purchase new ones, and so we've ensured that they're insured as much, the maximum we can get. It just seems crazy to me why someone would vandalize. We get valuable information from these counters. Basically drives the decision that council will make for road upgrades. So I don't know if they think we're spying on them, but it seems crazy.
Maybe they thought they were getting a ticket and that was,
That has always been my suspicion.
that'd be my suspicion.
Your radar detector in your car will pick it up exactly the same as a cop or a speed trap.
Yeah.
So
So I'm gonna go break it up.
So once a counter is damaged, is all the data in it lost?
This one seemed to be because they were really disappointed because it held a lot of summertime data. And so now we have to redo the traffic counts, but we're going to be dealing with fall, winter traffic, which we know isn't as high as it is up there.
we can make some informed extrapolations from that though. And take a look at the data we get today and apply a factor to increase it to account for the traffic we would have seen.
Too bad when you actually get actual data. That's just.
It's really disappointing. We were all just like heartbroken because we were hoping to get some information because we're all waiting for this information on the South Shore.
People complain on taxes and this is just a disgusting waste of taxpayers' money when they're on something like this.
Yeah, it's totally, the purpose was for road improvements in the area, but we just need to know the numbers that we're needing to use the road.
Not a lot of difference in that, why somebody would damage our water, free water places, right? Like it makes no sense at all. People.
Dave is just written on their forehead.
Be easier if we could point them out then.
On page 26, the bridge files, the two are they going to be installed this fall?
We are definitely working towards the second one. The Big Valley one is complete.
The second one, we're not going to do both of them?
Yeah, we'll be working on the second one, I think, shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second one.
It's a little, it's not as big as the Big Valley one. Plus, we're not looking to pave the surface of the road over top of it either. So
Just single culverts.
I think this one on 601, is it a double or single? Single, that's what I thought it was too.
On 601?
Just off of 601.
Good, good. That's still questions that can come in prior also, along with financial questions. Counselor Counselor McKay.
If there's no more questions, I'll move the report as presented.
Any more questions on it? If not, I'll call that question. All in favor? Carried. Okay, financial reports. 11.2.1, 11.2.2, which includes two reports, 11.2.3 and 11.2.4, which would be pages 85 to 114 of our package. Is there any questions on that that haven't been previously asked? Councilor Stevens?
I'll give you a motion to receive for information.
Okay. All questions, all in favor? Carried. Councilor fee sheets, page 108 of our package. Councilor Stevens?
I have one question. Fortunately, he's left the room. August 12th, low stress livestock.
That would be a Battle River research.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, session. I believe low stress livestock, Dave, was that Battle River research?
What's that?
Low stress livestock,
August 12th.
August 12th.
Yeah.
On your expenses, low stress
Hold on a
livestock.
second here, just a minute. What do you got?
This,
Low stress here. Stettler
Where was it at?
at Ag.
Yes.
That's, that Dylan Bigsby or whatever his is. That's
Battle River research.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I just
Just a description.
Just wondering.
yeah, I didn't see it advertised, so.
Well, I'm gonna have to tell them they're gonna advertise it better now, I guess. I think they had 20-some people there.
My first thought was, farm table, because that was the same date, and I was wondering if it was a label.
That's Nyberg's job, that thing.
Councilor Gender?
James, on the first, on July 27th, didn't put anything down other than just description.
What are you talking about? Which one?
First one, FCSS.
That's RCSS. I just put it down there. I'm a board member for for FCSS, and I was there, so it's one I don't typically bill for, so I got a free meal out of it, but I want people to know that we still, as council, we still go to these events, and we may not, it may look like we're not doing anything, but we are actually doing something in these events, so.
Your discretion not to charge anything for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Typically, on these social type functions, if you're not speaking on behalf of the county, you typically don't charge per diem. For
That
most
was
of
the host and
I emceed it, but I did charge, but then I donated my per diem to FCSS, and they directed it to the Stettler Crisis Aid Program. So, but I mean, that was just my choice.
It was actually an excellent event, and when you read some of the history on what they've accomplished in the 50 years, it was kind of pretty neat to see how much they've given back to the community over the years, and it really was just supper celebration for what they've accomplished, sort of thing. We had, I don't know, probably 60, 70 members from the public there celebrating too. Fun event.
I sat on that board a lot of years, and there was history there that I didn't even know, that almost all those social or service type organizations like that in Stettler were started by FCSS. I never knew that. That was an eye opener.
Councilor Gender?
The council.
Yeah. Any other questions? All questions, all in favor? Carried. Council committee report, Stettler Health Services Foundation meeting is the one we have listed. Any questions on that or clarification? Okay,
I'll move for information.
question all in favor? Carried. Okay, consent agenda items. We have Jason Nixon, Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services, thank you letter.
You know, I just want to again thank you, council, for making that happen. I did send out an email, I think, letting you all know that it worked. We got that housing, actually, it's interesting now. They came out, the housing advisor gave us a second suite that has been recently, somebody moved out, and we're going to do renovations on 2 suites now. So, yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
And then we have,
Yeah, I'd like to speak to one of these.
okay, we'll actually walk.
Okay.
Because there's a few here. 12.2 rural municipalities in Alberta re-understanding the challenges facing rural FCSS programs. Any any statements on that, gentlemen, from FCSS?
Yeah, it was a comprehensive study that on the FCSS programs throughout Alberta, and it was no surprise to none of the local FCSS what the outcome would be. But they found, that the FCSS is going far beyond what their mandate was of expectations, especially as we know when the government, provincial and federal agencies were never open, this fell on FCSS. So it really shows the work they do and the strain on the program. And I think probably this was a forerunner. They maybe even had this data when the government upped FCSS funding somewhat. So, I mean, it definitely paints FCSS in a good light for what they do for the communities. So I think it was a very favorable report for FCSS.
Excuse me, 12.3, RJ Sergensen, Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, response to declaration of drought. We did get, everybody read the letter that we had sent back to us. I don't know how everybody else is doing phone calls. I'm sure you're all getting phone calls, mainly from probably animal producers, on what the conditions of hay and pasture has been and watering in the fields. Also too, our MP did send us a letter back, and federal pressure would be very good if we could direct it anywhere. Communications, did we send a letter to the Canadian Agriculture Minister?
Yes, we
Did
did.
we get, I can't.
We
Did you get any response?
we got a receipt that it was received and nothing further.
Should we send a follow-up? Just to say that, based on this letter here, we are in an emergency state with feed, et cetera.
Make that motion.
Yeah, you'll make that motion.
Sure, I'll make
that. And then I need to respond to Damien also too, wanted to see if there's something we can do as a constituency. He's pushing for us, but being the other party, it sometimes doesn't get listened to very well. We have a motion on the table to forward another letter in. Any questions? No question, all in favor? Carried. 12.4, Adriana Lagrange, thank you letter.
Receive it for information.
Well, we'll receive all.
Oh, you're gonna do them all?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, Mickey Amory, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Alberta, response to rural crime letter. Is that the one you'd like to talk to?
Yeah, so this was in response to a letter our rural development committee sent in about some of the same concerns that the county has shared at RMA about catch and release, repeat offenders, that sort of thing. And they have made some changes. They've all, in this letter, they also discussed some lobbying that they're doing with the federal government for changes on the parole system. But I did take exception with a couple of the items that they pointed out that they were doing. And one was an emphasis on peace officers, fish and wildlife, and Alberta sheriffs, and how they're integrating them and expanding them. But yet, we see none of that. We have one fish and wildlife in our entire region who is doing double duty. He's a supervisor in another area, and he's the sole fish and wildlife for our area. And as we know, our singular Alberta sheriff is scheduled to retire within the next few months, and they are not replacing him. So it irked me a bit that we get a letter back saying, this is the emphasis, this is our solution, and we're going backwards.
I talked to him, he is that guy, it's our guy here. And that was in hunting season, getting close to it, and I said, so what's the deal? He said, I only go out on complaint. If you have a complaint, then you call me in. And another thing is, he said he spent a lot of time in Red Deer. So I don't know, do we have one full-time guy here? No.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mike is a good guy.
Yeah.
And I think he's good at his job, but he supervises in Red Deer. And then just to throw something else on him, he got sent out all over Western Canada to help with wildfires this spring too, when that was under blaze. So for a period of time, we had no one. We didn't even have a 0.5. There was no one.
You know, he's actually been on a couple of boar hunts up in the what do you call it area as well. He's they seem to tap him on the shoulder. I'm not sure he's here as much as
Yeah, he's not. He's never here. I phoned him, and he's never been in the town or in the county.
It's one of the pitfalls of having someone so capable and diversified. Everyone wants them.
Well, that's maybe at RMA, if
Makes it easier to get camp meeting.
we have an opportunity to bring it up at RMA too. Councillor Stillberg.
Yeah, and further to the catch and release problem, when in discussions we had with RCMP in the past, we learned that the criminal code has full provisions in there for much longer sentences for these particular crimes, and yet the judges choose not to use them. They choose to use the lighter sentence or lighter sentences in that. And I think that maybe when we get to Edmonton, we should lobby the government to put pressure on the powers that be. I guess that's a federal thing, but I mean, they can't be always given the lightest sentences because it's not working. And even for the benefit of the people, the offenders, if they were in longer, I'm sure, because a lot of the drug-related things, if you can kick your habit, you're not going to get out of jail the next day and steal again to feed your habit. But when it's a revolving door, exactly what happens. But if it was a decent-sized sentence, maybe they would have time to rehabilitate. So I think it's a win-win for both sides, and I think we just need to give them a push to really look at them.
I think we have lots of different conversations to have in the various sessions where we do.
Exactly, and that could even be a barefoot one as well.
You guys could do a barefoot.
Yeah.
Rural Development Network 2023 Alberta Housing and Service Needs Estimate Projection. Is there any comments on that? None from you, Councilor Nyberg?
Housing in.
Big Valley Festival, thank you to our sponsors and partners. That's fairly self-explanatory. Councilor Grover?
We should, county supplied that the old, have the drill down there, took it down there and picked it back up, and that was good because the drill come back in one piece. And, went out of her way to help the small town, small village of, they're celebrating Main Street celebration. Great, and they thank you for it. Good.
Okay, and then 12.9, we've discussed earlier, was the response, Damian Seekirk's response to the declaration of drought, which we're gonna send a letter into the Canadian Minister of Agriculture. So if I can get a motion to, Paul,
We accept them for information.
all question, all in favor? That would be carried. We're into legal updates now, but
I think if we wouldn't mind breaking for lunch a little early and doing that after lunch, I'd just like Craig here for that. And we've got him scheduled to handle that bylaw after the public hearing, and then we could roll into in camera.
motion for recess. Okay, all in favor? We will now open the meeting at 1:01 p.m. for public hearing for bylaw 1707-23, amendment to the land use bylaw. Do we have anybody called in?
Not at this.
So we don't require any introductions or any of these pieces?
No.
Okay. Could I ask the nature of the proposed amendment to be read into the record as it was advertised in the newspaper?
Absolutely.
So notice is hereby given that the County of Stettler number 6 is proposing to amend bylaw 1433-10 as follows. Rezone 9 acres, 3.64 hectares of the Northwest 6, 3921-4 from agricultural district to county residence agricultural district, as shown on an included map. The intent of this amendment is to rezone a section of the Northwest 6, 3921-4 where subdivision has been applied for, which would result in 4 private titles on the quarter section. The proposed parcel is to be rezoned from the agricultural district to the country residence agricultural district as per section 5.8 of the County of Stettler Municipal Development Plan, which states the proponent of a multi-lot subdivision may be required to obtain a land use rezoning out of the agricultural district to an appropriate district or districts in the land use bylaw. The bylaw may be reviewed at the County of Stettler Administration Building located at 6602 44th Avenue, Stettler, Alberta, during regular office hours, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. Public hearing to hear representation concerning bylaw 1707-23 is scheduled to be held Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 1 o'clock p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible in the council chambers at the County Administration Building located at 6602 44th Avenue, Stettler, Alberta. Any person wishing to comment on the proposed bylaw may do so in writing to the Director of Planning Development, County of Stettler number 6, Box 1270, Stettler, Alberta, TOC 200, or by email to ctl@stetlercounty.ca by September 6, 2023, or may make presentation at the public hearing. Following the public hearing, council may proceed with second and third reading to approve the bylaw. Should you require additional information, please contact the Planning and Development Department at 403-742-4441. And that was dated August 9th.
Okay, thank you. The rules of conduct will be written submissions should be tabled first for the record. Anyone wishing to support or oppose the amendment will be given the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes. Councilors may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes or questions to the presenters. There will be no debating between participants or presenters, and any questions from the floor shall be addressed through the chair. Are there any written submissions for or against?
There are no written submissions, Reeve Clark.
Thank you. And as far as verbal presentations, we still have no one called in?
That's correct, Reeve.
So is there any, do we have to wait to call or?
I mean, this one was well advertised, and thinking in the length of time that we've had, that somebody probably would have called in by now, so.
Is there any presentations from yourself, Craig?
I can give a very brief one, or I could save it for after. Clark, whichever.
Any questions from council? Public portion of this meeting is closed at 1:05 p.m. So that moves us to bylaws 10.1. Bylaw 1707-23 amendment to land use bylaw for second and third reading.
Thank you very much, Reeve Clark. So the proposal is to amend, as alluded to in the public hearing, a portion of the Northwest 6 to allow for future subdivision coming up that may make it to the MPC agenda on later this month. So the MDP allows up to 3 private titles under the Ag District, and to go to a fourth, the council first has to make a decision on whether or not they're comfortable seeing that different use outside of the agricultural district. In this particular case, the country residence agricultural district has been selected by the applicant. And after that, the subdivision authority then consider the fourth title in the quarter section. As you can see on the graphic, we're close to the hamlet of Nevis. Immediately to the north is the existing or previously subdivided parcel. It's almost the same size as the area being proposed for redesignation. The surrounding area outside of the hamlet of Nevis is agricultural land in this general vicinity. Planning staff are supportive of the application and don't have any concerns with this proposal. To that end, Reeve Clark, the recommended action from administration is to give second and third reading to the bylaw.
Thank you. Councilor King?
I'll move second reading.
Any questions, concerns? Call the question, all in favor? Councilor Stevens? Go ahead.
I'll give you the motion for the reading.
Any questions, concerns? Call the question, all in favor? Not carried. Okay, we are into number 13. Well, actually, there's one other thing that we hadn't put on the agenda, but I talked to Nick just at dinner time. I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it was the county open houses at both Botha for my ward and Red Bull for Paul's ward. It's not working, or is it working now? Yeah, so it was the presentations and open houses for the county in your community for my area, which was going to be held in Botha, and then for Councilor McKay's area, that would be held in Red Willow. After our one in Stettler just over a week ago at the Ag Society, this time of year is very difficult to get much for attendance. And they are very good sessions for people to come and ask questions, to see the presentations. And it's a lot of work from staff. There was a supper with it, and it just seemed to be a waste not to be able to have it when people could attend. So therefore, Nikki has suggested that we put this into late November in order to try and better fit people's schedules so we get better attendance at these. And so we get what we need out of it. We did this versus going into the trade fair this year, and we've had very good response in all other areas. The response in Stettler ward was good, except we just didn't have a lot of people there. So just to put it on record that we seriously thought about it, and we'd only had 2 register for the one at Botha that would be this Thursday. So it was just didn't look to be worth it. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we need a motion for that?
Should maybe make a motion to receive for information, and then it's in the minutes that we discussed the cancellation of those 2.
Paul will make that motion. Okay, call the question, all in favor? That's carried.
That way there's no discrepancy.
Question?
Well, no, I voted for it, but administration could give direction to the people with the signs so they can get them taken down.
Is the one still south of town?
Because the town is still standing.
The one south of town is for an event that's already taken place.
The one that I seen.
One I seen
Well, the one from the east is gone, isn't it?
No, it's gone. It says rescheduled to a later date.
Okay. I didn't read it this morning, so.
So I think that's.
Anyhow, I think we should take them down and then put them back up when we get closer to the date.
Can you look at the north of town, is just north of town, or
Yeah, 3 miles.
can you check?
I'm sure you know where there's.
I wanted to leave the postponement announcement up there till after the Red Willow event date has passed, and then that'll be removed, but I'll double check on the rest of them that they're removed early.
Does it show postponed, though, Paul?
Postponed, it says, September 21st, still up in.
Okay. Okay, I have a text from her yesterday showing me pictures, so maybe it was the wrong one.
So that was this morning, right, a minute, on the north side, anyhow, it still says 21st.
And the RVSP, I guess the importance of that is then we know how many people are coming. Because with what we had, you could basically phone the 2 people and say that we're not doing it. So that's the purpose of the RVSP.
Well, not only that, we like to give the local caterers options we want to respect them.
Yeah. You know, if you catch a very small percent that didn't RVSP, it's one thing. If it's the majority, it's very hard to plan for them. Okay. In-camera session legal update, FOIP section 27, privilege information. I have some, Councilor McKay.
I'll move us in the camera.
All question, all in favor? And that's council meeting will start, hopefully at 10. One last item, Councilor Nyberg, you beat Councilor Grover.
Yeah, well, I got to come out of camera and he's just playing